You're bouncing around, Anna.
I clicked the hang up button instead of the mute button.
Well, I'm glad you said something. My sound was off. I'm like, wait.
So Nate's going to start streaming about now. So
okay.
Just to make sure we're in the loop. So just to give you a heads up.
All righty.
Yeah.
Do you have it streaming, Anna?
Yes, it is streaming. I've checked. It's running.
Have you guys already checked the rolling and all that good stuff? The web. Okay.
We're streaming.
Okay. And do we have any public comment?
There was one public comment, and I have put it in your board folder, and it is on the LCAP.
Okay. So it's 6 o'clock. So I will honor everyone's time and call us to order at 6 o'clock. The first thing is the approval of the agenda. So if we don't have anything to move or remove, which there's not much, so I don't think there would be anything, can I have an approval to approve the agenda? Or a motion, excuse me?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay. Agenda approved. And so we have one public comment, and I got that ready. So just to remember that the following public comment was received by the district using the telecommuting public comment email address. For ease of public participation, it will be read into the record by myself, and this should not be as construed as an endorsement of this comment by the district or by any person in the district. So I'll go ahead and read this. It says, "Good evening. After reading the 2021 LCAP, I have some questions. Pupil participation and progress, page 6, specifies TK5 teachers will use iReady assessments, while grades 6 through 12 will rely on local benchmarks and curriculum assessment to monitor growth and progress. Why are we using different assessment tools? How often will assessments be done? Sanger Unified School District is also using the iReady assessments, or for assessments, excuse me. Their LCAP mentioned the assessment tool being used for all students 3 times a year to identify what student strengths are and areas where support is needed. From what I've read about iReady, it will also measure the students' growth through the year. My last question is about the term used in the funding chart. Can you please explain what contributing columns mean? Thank you very much, Nancy Bennett." And I'll assume that when we get to the open public hearing, then Becky can address those questions. Did you make some notes about that, Becky? The two?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Nancy, for that email in, and I'm sure she's with us tonight. And no other thing is flooding in, Anna? Okay. All right, so then we'll move right into the public hearing. So I will open the public hearing, and then we will ask if there's any, after Becky presents and we ask questions, that we can ask for any public comment. And again, remember, those that are watching, you can email in during the meeting. It didn't have to go in before, but just make sure you use the board meeting, no plural, at fbusd.us, and you can email anytime, and we'll stop and check with Anna throughout the public hearing. Okay, so I will call it to session at 6:03. And then I'll turn it over to you, Becky.
Okay, so there is about a 30-second lag from what we say right now to what's happening on YouTube. So when we look for public comment during this time, let's just allot for that 30 seconds. So what the document you have in front of you is the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. That plan is supposed to outline how we are going to address pupil loss of learning, our special needs students, our EL students, our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So would you like me to just go through each of the parts together, or how would you like me to review these?
That sounds fine. If no one else has another, we'll just cover the sections and
Okay.
can we talk for each one and ask questions at the time, or do you want us to hold them till the end?
Sure. Would you like me to share my screen so everyone can see where I'm at?
Sure, that would probably be nice for the public.
Okay. I'm working on it. Okay, so I'm going to blow this up. How is that? Can you see it decently? Okay, great. So we have the first part of the plan is just a general information. We had to describe the impact of COVID-19 on our LEA. LEA is our local educational agency. So I apologize for that. That's what LEA means. People have asked me tons and tons of times, what is that? So we are the LEA, Fort Bragg Unified. And so we had to start with just a description on how this has impacted us. And I have to be honest with you, I don't know if I can quite capture those words as vividly as I experienced as a parent or as part of this institution. I think what's difficult to really capture with COVID-19 is how it's truly just knocked the wind out of our sails. I look at seniors right now who were hoping to play their senior year of sports. And not that sports are the end all be all, but it's the one time in our children's lives where this is what they get to do. And this is the age bracket you get to do it. And once this is over, you don't get to go back to it. So that's been very difficult for me to watch. It's been difficult for me to watch students lose their motivation. I've been watching lots of different YouTube videos to try and to share with parents to say, this is why socializing our kids is so important. This is a very pinnacle time in our young people's lives where they are learning to express themselves, when they are branching out and figuring out who they are as young people. And to cut off the social world so abruptly was difficult. And regardless of what anyone says, this screen environment is not the same as being face-to-face. What I struggle with in this environment of screens is that I don't know if you're looking at me or not. I don't know when you're making a face if you're distracted to screen too, or if that's the kid in the background, banging on the dishes because they're trying to get your attention. So I've struggled in this environment because one of the things that I rely on is trying to read people, trying to read body language so that I can anticipate how I need to respond so that my message is being understood and conveyed. So when we talk about the impact of COVID-19, the loss of in-person instruction has been difficult for our community to grasp. And what's really more difficult about the pandemic that is difficult to quantify on a piece of paper is the spectrum of emotion that is part of it. We have folks all over the place. And what I mean by that is some folks, who are at one part of the spectrum who say, I'm worried about truly health, dying, everyone's going to die. It's really hard. Then we have people on the other side. This is a hoax. It's not real. And then we have folks who kind of fluctuate in between that. And there's a lot of middle ground with this. So what's difficult about this pandemic is that I can't say with full certainty, well, the majority of our community wants. I can't say that with full certainty. Typically, when I come to you as a superintendent and bring a decision to you as an administrator, we usually have our thumb on the pulse and can figure out, well, we've got this many here, this many here. This is where the pitfalls are. This one's truly difficult because I can honestly say that we have folks just really all over the map, and the opinions change. So how has COVID-19 impacted Fort Bragg Unified? It's impacted Fort Bragg Unified in multiple ways. I worry about feeding our kids. I worry about our kids who are in high anxiety, very high stressful homes where families are suffering because of loss of work, because of a difficult emotional situation. I worry about our kids who are introverts to begin with, and their one outlet was school, and now they don't have that. I worry about so many levels. On the bright side, there have been kids who have thrived in this environment. There are some students whose parents have reported, this has been okay. So when I say it's all over the map, I truly mean that it's all over the map. So for us, Fort Bragg Unified has served more meals than we typically have on a non-COVID year. We served last week, I want to say, I think Pilar said it was 762 meal bags. That was over 11,000 meals for the week. And typically in a non-COVID regular year, that would have been, we served roughly around a little over 10,000 meals. So that was an increase in meal count. So how COVID has impacted us is I really worry about our kids' emotional health. Please know that that's at the forefront of my thought, more so than reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have fed more families and more kids through this, which I think is great. Can I completely articulate how this has impacted us, not in 3 paragraphs or less. And I could have written more in this part, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't drown out the entire document. So please know that what you see here is kind of the highlights of the main issues of how COVID-19 has impacted us. The next section, any questions on that before I move on? Okay, stakeholder engagement. So we are required to elicit as much feedback as possible into this plan. What was difficult is that this all happened in a very short amount of time, coupled with trying to start school. So Tina Krenoff, I'm grateful for her. She actually called several of our DLAC members from last year and had one-on-one phone conversations with them. I attended the Dana Gray Parents Club meeting, the Redwood Parents Club meeting, the Fort Bragg Middle School Site Council meeting, the Fort Bragg Middle School Parents Club meeting, the Fort Bragg High School Site Council meeting, and our DLAC meeting last Friday. There's another DLAC meeting tomorrow because only one parent attended our DLAC meeting yesterday. We are doing our best to try and do as much outreach and parent contact as possible. We've had 2 board chats, and I have to tell you, the board chats in the virtual setting, we've had more people than we've ever had before. So there are components of the virtual setting that I believe have been truly successful. And I can see why the board chats have been much more well attended than live in-person board chats. And it's that ability to pop in and pop out without travel. It's that ability to come in and stay for the part that you need and be able to pop out. It's that ability to have it on your screen and still do whatever else it is you need to do and still be able to come back in. So those have been fantastic. We also surveyed our certificated staff in July to figure out and find out what tools were necessary, and then we purchased based on that survey. So that's the stakeholder engagement. Any questions about that? Okay. The next section is a summary of feedback provided by specific stakeholder groups. So I listed the staff survey, the parent survey, the EL families. The coordination of the bilingual aides was a direct reflection of us talking to parents and asking what the needs were. So we have an EL internet room now. We have an internet room at the high school, which is the library, because our high school kids were saying we don't want to be with little kids. So our high school took up the reins and they are managing that room on their own. And then we have 3 rooms through Kudos. So right now we have 5 internet rooms, and we are looking for more creative ways to serve the needs of our students. So any questions on that? Okay. In-person instructional offerings. Right now, we are not in person. We are in purple. I know there is tension right now throughout the district. I did publish in our blog about going into the red zone and what that would mean, and folks are nervous about that. But as of right now, we are in purple, which means the board does not have the ability to take a vote on going back right now, because according to the county status, we're not in a position to return to in-person instruction. When we do go to in-person instruction, though, we have a signed MOU with our teachers union and with our classified union. So we will be returning under those parameters. And if anything needs to be bargained or changed, we have a clause in each of those that we can return to the bargaining table to discuss that. A lot of families may not recognize that this is a change in working condition. And we have 2 unions that are part of Fort Bragg Unified. And anytime there's a change in working condition, that becomes a bargainable component. So that's why we are looking at those 2 MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, for us to follow when we are able to return to in-person instruction. So I highlighted parts of the in-person instruction within this section of the learning continuity and attendance plan. And basically it was our hybrid model, A days and B days. Wednesdays are virtual learning days. No more than 24 kids in a K-3 cohort, 12 and 12, and no more than 28 students in grades 4 and 5, and no more than 30 in grades 9 through 12. Any questions on that? Okay. And then under that is some of the funding so that you can see what we've spent our money on, and then a brief description on each one. Mary?
Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't see the PPE and that sort of thing on there. Is that separate monies?
When did you answer that?
It's not so much that it's separate monies, it's that this document doesn't necessarily speak to those items. It speaks more to learning loss and how we're going to help kids get back to where they were. It talks about distance learning and in-person learning and our special needs students and that sort of thing. There wasn't really, this isn't, I would not consider this a comprehensive document. It's really very much geared towards those particular areas. What are you doing to make sure our kids are going to be able to catch up and keep up?
I see.
Is how I saw it. There was so much more that could have been in here, and there's so much that we haven't done yet that we're still talking about doing, that it's really almost a temporary document. Mm-hmm. But it's what we're planning to do and some of what we've done.
Okay, so more of the instructional and social emotional supports.
More student oriented.
Yeah. Okay.
And so how I looked at this, Mary, also in just the webinars that I attended specifically on this plan, was for us to justify how we plan to spend those monies. Mm-hmm. So the PPE, we don't need justification for that. The cleaning materials, all those things that go into the health and COVID-19 mitigation, that's nothing that we have to justify. Mm-hmm. So that's easy. What we do have to justify is, why are we purchasing things like iReady? And I'll get to that in the next section. Okay. And that's what this document is about, how we are going to address the attendance, how we're going to address bringing kids back, how we're going to address keeping them learning, how we're going to address remediation and intervention. Okay. So the distance learning program, I will now, yes, go ahead.
Can we just pause really quick? Anna, has anything come in so far?
Okay, we had one public comment which is addressing the school reopening. So that is the next item on the agenda.
Then we'll hold that until we get there. Okay, thank you, Becky.
Okay, so the distance learning program, these are all the components that we have right now that have online components to them. So these are all the programs that have online components. There was a question about iReady. We purchased iReady for grades TK through 8. And we are in the process right now of determining which assessments we're going to be using. We will be using the iReady assessments for Dana Gray and Redwood, and we are more than likely not going to be using our district benchmarks this year, but that's a discussion that we are going to have with our grade levels and with our leadership teams. And the reason for that is we don't know when we're able to bring kids back. We don't want to over-assess them. When we do finally have them in our midst, we don't want to spend that time testing. We want to make sure we provide as much as we can in the area of on-site, in-person instructional time. So we are looking at how to best do this. The other part is that iReady is completely dependent on an online assessment. We want to make sure that the assessments that we give our students are meaningful and purposeful. And so if they're not ready to take those assessments, we don't want to give an assessment to give an assessment. So we're in the process right now of looking at what we do, determining our curriculum plans, looking at the whole year and looking at the menu of assessments that we have and which ones are going to provide the most meaningful data for us. And so that's why right now we are still talking about local benchmarks. We're talking about the oral reading records, and we're also talking about iReady, because they all three give us different pieces of data to examine and determine how our instructional program is moving forward. So for right now, one of the concerns that we have is we don't want to overassess. We want to make sure that when we do this with our children, that we've provided the instruction so that the assessment is telling us the information we need to know. So that's in response to Nancy's question. I hope I answered it. The Fountain System Pinnell is new. It is a level literacy intervention program that we're actually very excited to be using our learning loss mitigation money to fund. It's an expensive program, but it's actually a very effective program, and the data on it is incredibly hopeful. So we're looking forward to that. The main platform for distance learning is Google Classroom. Our teachers have engaged in that model, and so over the last couple of weeks, I have to tell you that our teachers have been working incredibly hard to modify what they're doing to meet the needs of the families and the kids. It was interesting. I spoke to a teacher, and that teacher said, I started this off and I was doing Jamboard and Google Classroom, and I was looking at Pear Deck and Nearpod and doing all these things and trying to get all this up. And then the tech failed because there were too many windows, there were too many things going on. And so when they pared that down, they were really able to figure out, okay, this is the best way to do it. So there's been lots of learning along the way. I know Ari Rule, our tech director, moved all the Chromebook cameras down to the lowest resolution so that the streaming in and out, the receiving and the sending would not be as taxing on people's internet lines. And that change actually has been quite helpful. Teachers are discovering that if we're asking students to open up a whole bunch of tabs, that's been difficult. So folks have been managing and working with their kids as much as possible and really adapting day to day on what's working and not working. The collaboration that our teachers have been engaged in has been huge. They've been working together. They've been leaning on each other. We are grateful for the time and really the thought that they've put into all of this. So we are dipping a toe in many of these online resources, and we haven't fully explored all of them, but they're using them quite well. Yes, Diana.
I just want to go back to iReady quickly. Is that an assessment that happens from the home, where a child can assess themselves if they're provided with a section? I don't know anything about iReady. Is that the point of trying it during this distant learning, is that it can be performed at home and then the data gets processed and the teacher has that to see?
Yeah. So students have an account in iReady, and so when they log in, they start with a screener. And that diagnostic then helps the teacher determine what lessons are appropriate for the student, and it's in math and reading. And we can have one of our teachers come in maybe at the next board meeting to give a little report on iReady and perhaps a little demonstration. But that's the part of iReady that was very attractive to us, that we could truly target student learning and we could personalize lessons at a student's level. And then if we have students who are above grade level, we can also personalize and enrich and enhance their learning. So it wasn't just about remediation. It was also about enhancing so that iReady truly could address all of our learners.
And then just a follow-up question kind of with the benchmark. Is there going to be CASP in January? Is that a bad rumor?
So the CASP is supposed to be returning. It can begin as early as January.
Okay.
We never take it in January. Right. We are anticipating that we will need to do the CASP this year. I do not see the state foregoing that again, but you never know. There could be such an outcry that the state may acquiesce and say, we'll skip it again one more year. But I'm on a wait and see approach. At this point, the CASP is not at the top of my priorities as superintendent. As a school district, the top of our priorities is making sure that our kids, that we deal with our children. And I'm more concerned about their mental health at this point, to be honest with you, more so than reading and writing. Kathy, I know you had your hand up at some point.
I just wanted to go back because Nancy, I just went back and read Nancy's question. It's specifically asking about that the K5 are going to use iReady for assessments, but 6-12 is relying on local benchmarks and curriculum assessments. And she was just curious why, it looks like, why are we using different assessments?
So the middle school uses StudySync for their language arts program that has embedded benchmarks within that program. So what makes more sense is for the middle school to determine how much are we using StudySync this year. And if they're using that with much more rigor, then it makes more sense for them to do the StudySync benchmarks. When we looked at iReady, the focus on iReady was really for K-5. We purchased it for K-8 because of the fact it went up to K-8. And also, we know that we have students in the middle school program who require remediation and intervention. It's not necessarily an intervention program, but definitely a remediation program. And so we wanted to have our middle school students to have access to that. iReady can be used on every kid at the middle school. Again, it's a great screener. It gives us the ability to see where kids are, and then we can track them for the whole year. But again, I want to be really careful about what we're throwing at our kids. And I also want to be really careful at what we're throwing at our teachers. The middle school has bitten off a huge piece of an apple. And what they've bitten off is that all of their teachers are self-contained grade level teachers. So I want to make sure that we aren't throwing too many things at them at too much time, but they come together as a grade level, they come together as a team and say, okay, we are using StudySync. We feel that these embedded benchmarks are going to give us much more purposeful and meaningful data than doing iReady. Or they may say, you know what, let's do iReady. Or they may say, let's do both. But I need to give them an opportunity to learn about the iReady program. They haven't been fully trained on it. So to say this is what we're going to do is not fair. I want them to be able to look at both. It's also a math program. They have a math program right now at Fort Bragg Middle School. They started doing their assessments on Chromebooks last year, so I don't want to just derail that as well. So the middle school does need time to figure out where they want to collect their data and look at iReady. It might be that they forego the iReady assessments this year and wait till next year. It may be that they forego the StudySync and the math assessments this year and do them on iReady. But because they haven't been fully trained on iReady yet, that's not a decision that I'm going to make for them. I want to hear from their leadership team. I want to hear from their principal. I want to hear from the teachers who are using it, and then we'll move forward with the decision. The other part at the middle school is that they've been using the CASP interim assessments as well as part of their benchmarks. So I really want to be sensitive to what they're doing right now, that we have our teachers who are typically subject matter teachers now teaching science, language arts, math, and social studies. And that is a big ask. And they're doing a great job. And for our families, they get to work with one teacher, and that's a big deal in this COVID environment, in this distance learning environment. So I really want to recognize the hard work and the great work that they're doing, and also give them an opportunity to investigate this to make the best decision possible for their students. Does that answer the question?
I think so. There was, we can go back and if you want to check out she referred to Sanger, okay. And they're using iReady too, but that's something if you want to look at later. And then the other question is about the column.
We actually visited Sanger Unified. We sent a team a few years ago, and Sanger is one of those model districts where now they only take visitors on certain times, and because they've been so bombarded. They're doing great work. And what they've done with their demographic of student and how they have really attacked their student achievement is it's remarkable, which is why folks look to Sanger and use them as the model. But for right now, we have not had all the training that we need to use these fully. And so that's why I'm just a little reluctant to make a decision for the site. I want them to make that decision, and I want them to have the data to do it wisely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Access to devices and connectivity. We do have Chromebooks one-to-one. We are discovering that the Chromebooks, it's a little bit tough for the student Chromebooks to handle multiple tabs that all require internet. So if you have a YouTube video that's going on at the same time as the Google Grid, as Google Classroom, and a Google Docs, that becomes a little burdensome on that little machine. When we purchased these Chromebooks, they did exactly what we needed them to do, to be available in the school setting, to handle one class at a time where the teacher is teaching live and the kids can get on their Chromebook and see the Google Doc and work on that, or see a YouTube video and work on that. But what we're asking these little machines to do right now is to hold on to the Google Grid, which is a lot of streaming, hold on to a Google Classroom, hold on to potentially to a Google Doc, and anybody else who's using an extension. Is it Jamboard, Nearpod, Pear Deck, all those things. And then a Google Docs or a Google Sheet or a Google Slide. So there's a lot that we're asking these little machines. We are discovering that we have to kind of limit how much we want kids to do, and then watch the tab jumping. How many tabs do they have open? And also what kids are discovering is that if you have different meets and you have 2 tabs open from those different meets, you need to close one out before you can open up another one. So there's lots of things that we're learning along the way. This is definitely a work in progress. I am pleased, though, that we do have enough devices for our students. I wish they were stronger, to be quite honest with you, but we'll get there one step at a time. Pupil participation and progress. Description, how we will assess pupil progress. So right now our goal is to get iReady up and running, at least for math and language arts. Again, the middle school is on hold a little bit because they haven't been able to access their training yet. I know that Redwood and Dana Gray are in the process of having those assessments get done. The good news is that Aaron Carter from the Mendocino County Office of Education has been working with us, and he continues to help lead and guide our work in this area. So he has been truly a wonderful source of information and expertise for us. So we're going to be looking at the oral reading records, our iReady assessments, and potentially our local district benchmarks to kind of gauge our student progress. I will tell you very honestly, I don't know if we're going to be using all 3 of those right now, but that's what's in the repertoire. I do believe that Redwood and Dana Gray will be using the iReady for math and reading. I do believe that the high school is going to be using their local benchmarks for their subject areas. And the middle school right now, they were doing the CASP interim assessments. They may be continuing with that. So there are different ways that we're going to do this. The good news is we are going to do our very best to get this information into Illuminate so that we can track and maintain the data. I don't know enough about iReady right now to look at how the data is tracked. I know iReady tracks it, but I have to ask Sarah McGee and Aaron Carter if that can be pushed into Illuminate. The professional development that we have, we did some voluntary professional development because in the summer we required teachers to participate. We can only offer it. In June, we did offer teachers the ability to either get paid 5 days at their daily rate or earn DCEC units, which is our district credit for district continuing education credit. I had to think of that, sorry. So we did offer those things so they could advance on the salary schedule. We received technology training on the smart TVs that came with those TVs. We've purchased 30 hours of math solutions training that is specifically targeting synchronous and asynchronous distance learning math instruction. So that's coming. We have iReady professional development. Impact is the new social studies curriculum that you approved and adopted at the end of last year. And so that professional development is coming out. We are doing Tuesdays with the techs, Tuesdays at 2. We did it today. What I like about that, it's an hour, but this week and last week, it's been a half hour. People jump in, ask their questions. If you're listening, you can hear it from the whole group, see what the questions are. Every time I've been on Tuesdays at 2, I've actually learned something more about tech that I didn't realize, and it's just small nuances, but that's been valuable. We've tried to capture as many how-to videos as we can to share with folks. We have approved technology mentors. We've approved additional mentors throughout the district for different things. And then we have professional development from Fountas and Pinnell that will be coming in October. Questions on that? Staff roles and responsibilities.
Let's just check with Anna real quick.
We now have 3 public comments, but they are all on the return to school.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm
Thank you,
compiling them into a document for you.
Okay. Thank you.
So the staff roles and responsibilities, when we got to about May of COVID 2020, it was very clear to us that we needed someone who was going to be a point person for our English learners. And so that's why the EL district-wide coordinator was resurrected. It wasn't really something Joanne did. Joanne Farrell was more of our curriculum and instruction person as well. She was an administrator. So this is more of a teacher on special assignment and looking at coordinating our EL efforts from all the sites. So Tina's working directly with the principals, and that position has been hugely valuable as we've returned. We've reinstated a bilingual instructional aid because we required more help when we added in the internet room. Each site now has a COVID-19 contact person. We haven't really used that person just yet. The principals have been doing the majority of the work, but we are working with people so that when students return, we can have a point person to directly address any issues that may arise. Counseling services, we added an additional 40 hours of our NPA, which is a non-public agency, and they provide counseling services that we typically have used them for our special ed services, but this year we've asked for an additional 40 hours for any of our students who are in need of counseling. So it's been wonderful. They've been working hard and making contacts with families and kids. So we're grateful for that. Yes, Diana.
Have you budgeted through June, or is it just wondering if those services will go through the school year?
Those services will go through the school year. Do you want to address that, Wendy, or do you want me to?
So there are 6 different pots of money that were part of the code relief, and some of them have longer lives than others. So we're using as much as we can of that to pay for those services up, in the first part of the year, and then other pots of that money to pay for the rest of the year.
Okay. And then we actually added an IT person to our staff. This year, we had 3 in March, April, May, and June. And it was very clear that with as much tech as we have now, 3 for 1,800 students, 250 employees, it's a little rough. So we've added a technician, and he's been fabulous, a wonderful addition to the team. Any questions on that? Okay. Supports for pupils with unique needs. Carolyn Carini has been working with our special ed team to make sure that we can address the needs of our kiddos. These are some of the things that we've purchased to help: Unique Learning, Star Online, Seesaw, TeachTown. And there's a description for each on those. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the Fountas and Pinnell was also purchased, and that was recent. That happened, I would say, within the last 3 or 4 weeks. And maybe it could be 2 or 3 weeks. So that's a relatively new purchase. And so we're just getting that together. That's probably the number one thing that Carolyn is most excited about right now. Yes.
So do we have any data yet on the tier 1, 2, or 3 intervention that's needed, or it's too early to know that?
We're actually collecting that right now. The kids are doing, at least at Redwood and Dana Gray, they are doing their iReady assessments. And then we have all the money for this part. And I can put that up there for a while if people want to look at that.
Can you talk about the contributing column?
Yes, Wendy.
Okay, so this was part of the form that wasn't very clear, and when we were doing it, I had to go dig around the instructions and find out what they meant by that. It's to indicate whether the action contributes to meeting the increased or improved services requirement as described in the increased or improved services section, which is towards the end of the document. And everything we're doing is an increased and or improved service that we have listed here, because technically it has to be according to the rules of the funds. So, and because we have such a high unduplicated percentage, everything we do reaches all of our unduplicated count. So everything in here is marked yes.
Thank you.
So for pupil learning loss, we list the specific items that we are using to address that. iReady, the Fountains and Pinnell leveled literacy intervention system, Everyday Math Online, and Acellus. There has been some controversy with Acellus, and just to put your mind at ease, the courses that were addressed in that controversy, we haven't been assigning. So we will continue to look at other online course programs that could meet this need if this is not something that we want to continue. So we're looking at that closely this year. Okay, and then the strategies. I have to tell you, I appreciate the work Aaron Carter has been doing with our teams. He is incredibly well respected. He knows who our teachers are. He knows our students. He knows our demographic. He knows our data. So I really appreciate him working with our teams to help guide us so that we don't lose sight. So he's been wonderful. We've been heavily relying on his wisdom as we move into the next stages, especially with the LLI program, which is the Fountains and Pinnell program, because he actually used it in a district where he was a principal. So we're excited about that. And just so everyone knows, some of these sections, we didn't put every component on the actions because they were already listed in another section, and we didn't want to mislead folks to believe that we were spending double the money. Mental health and social emotional well-being. Like I said earlier, we reinstated the full-time counselor at Dana Gray. We purchased the new second step social emotional learning program for Redwood, Dana Gray, and Fort Bragg Middle School. We're purchasing Mind Up for Dana Gray, the additional hours of counseling services, the restorative practices training and respect agreement training for schools, and then we're providing formal conferencing training for counselors, school psychologists, our counselors, which is the non-public agency counselors, and then our site administrators. And that's all previews of upcoming attractions. And formal conferencing is part of restorative practices. Yes, Diana.
So is there any correlation? Do you have, I'd asked this by email, but for attendance, if you're able to track, because just like in campus school, there are kids that attend but don't contribute and aren't engaged. So I know there's a bunch of crazy CDE daily attendance. Is that something that will help you, I guess, kind of in this area too? If someone's there and not engaged, or someone is not attending at all, do you feel like that attendance will help in that area? Or is there a need for like a student help ticket where, when you don't know where to go, maybe you go to, on the homepage and, for this more of this emotional well-being than an academic issue that a teacher would help, with?
So we have referrals that teachers can use. It's a Google form that they have at the site to refer students to the school counselor, and then the school counselor triages the needs to see if that student would potentially be better served by our counseling services. And so the counselor is just trying to figure out, okay, what would best work for this kiddo in this situation? So for us right now, we're using our counselors as kind of the point person to figure out who needs what. The counselors are definitely part of the attendance plan when students aren't attending. They are kind of that second tier of a phone call. So I know that our high school is looking at attendance every week to see who the hitters are. I know all of our sites are looking at attendance every week. They're looking at attendance every day. What's difficult with attendance right now is the coding that CDE asked us to use and how that works. So we're doing our best to navigate those codes, and we're doing our best to make sure that when we run reports on ARIES that we can look at it and really determine which students are engaged and are not engaged. The good news is that at least in K-8, because our teachers have fewer than 30 students in our K-8 program, it's a little bit easier to manage and track. You can take your attendance and see who logged in today and who didn't, who's on my screen right now and who is not. And I know that our high school teachers, they have considerably more because they have 3 sections and their virtual learning team. So some of them have over 100 students, and they're tracking them like they would if they were on campus, not only through ARIES, but also they're tracking them for the attendance policy. So we're doing our best. But any teacher who has an inkling that a kiddo is struggling, there's a referral form and they can quickly move that student to different levels. Do they work with the school counselors? Do they work with our NPA group? Okay. Pupil and family engagement. I talked about the things that we had done and how we have been working with our families. And there are 2 periods in that sentence. I just saw that. So I will fix that. You did not catch that, Diana. So we're trying to figure out how to do things to help our families and how to have them available. So Dana Gray had a back to school night that I think was largely successful, and they were able to work with families directly in a live setting. And I really appreciate their ability to do that with their families. I think that made huge headway. We have been trying to post how-to videos for our families. When we find them in Spanish, we post them in Spanish. When we find them in English, we put them in English. So we're trying to share as much as we can to help families, recognizing that time is limited. So the nice thing about a how-to video is that you can watch it, pause it, return to it. You can rewind it, play it again. This is all still very new to us, and we're trying to figure out the best way to address the needs of our families. More so than anything, if I could just say a message to every parent out there, if there is something that you have a concern about, the best thing you can do is pick up the phone and call your teacher. It's better than an email because they can hear your tone. You can ask a question back and forth and you can keep going instead of getting into an email thread that may take 2 or 3 days to answer. Because if anybody's email is like my email, I miss emails sometimes because it got pushed to page 3 and I thought I was savvy by going back 2 pages. So if there's a question or an issue that any parent has, please contact your teacher. That in-person, I should say in-person, but that voice-to-voice contact is going to be able to address your situation much faster. Yes, Kathy.
Now, are the voicemails getting, because I always thought email was better because them being remote. So are the phones somehow, I mean, if they're at home working and their lights blinking in their classroom, how do they know to check their voicemail?
So all of our phones, when there's voicemail, the little headset has a red light on it and it lights up. So if you have a red light on your phone of that extension, that tells you that you have a voicemail. The other thing that parents can do if they're worried about the phones the lines not coming, they can leave a message at the office. Please have Mrs. Walker call me back. So that's another strategy as well. The phones do not ring in the teachers' classrooms during instruction because we don't want the phones ringing while they're teaching. Questions? So let me move into the attendance plan part. So this was the district attendance plan, and each of the sites tailored the district plan to meet the needs of their teams as well. So this is the basic skeleton of the plan. These were the 5 codes that CDE asked us to use. We incorporated them into ARIES so that when teachers take attendance, they take attendance through ARIES using these codes. Excusing an absence, we ask parents to do the same thing. If you are not going to make contact with the teacher at all that day, or if you're not going to be able to do school that day, please contact the front office and let them know. parent contact information. This has been the struggle for most of us every year, is when we go to contact a parent and we look at their ARIE screen and it's not current and updated. And every year now we are completely online and the parents are in charge of going into their ARIE screen and updating their information. And I can't tell you how many parents we still have whose information is not current. And on the other flip side of the coin, because it's fully online, we have a whole bunch of families who were able to really fix things immediately when they registered their kids. So we will continue to work on this, but we are asking every family to check your ARIE screen. If there's any part of it that's incorrect, please let us know so that we can help fix it now. Yes, Diana.
So I see that if your child's going to miss a class or a day, to contact, not to contact by email with that information. Does that also count? You really want the office to hear it from you and not the parent square? I mean, email the parent square.
Well, and the hard part is we can't verify that that's the parent. So we just have to verify that someone has eyes, ears on a kid somewhere because we were in distance. So that's why we're saying no emails. What happens when a student is marked as a 1? If there are 2 absences in the same week, expect a phone call from a teacher. If there are 2 or more absences in 2 weeks, then expect a phone call from the counseling office or the front office. And then we already have kids in tier 3. They've been absent 2 or more absences within 3 weeks in a row. We're making home visits. We're calling everybody on their contact list. We're mailing letters home. We recognize that the first couple of weeks, this was a little tricky. We had a lot of misinformation out there. Some families thought they only had to check in once a week. So we're cleaning all of that up so that folks know that we need to check in with your children daily. Even if you're on packets, we have to check in with your kids daily. So once it's starting to smooth out a little bit, we're trying to make as many phone calls as possible to get a hold of as many parents as we can so that we can clear up any misinformation. So we've been working at it. I even made a few phone calls, and it was nice for me to kind of get away from my desk and talk to former students who now have children, which completely ages me. So we have an attendance improvement plan when someone gets to tier 3. If they are truly struggling, we are trying to find all solutions possible to help them to make sure that their kid is available to attend school. SARB is really kind of the last step. If we have a family that we just can't contact, then we're going to have to go through the SARB process, which is not fun. So but we're trying to really work with families and find solutions so that we can avoid that. Questions on this?
Anything come in, Anna, from the email that's not opening related?
No comment.
Okay. Thank you.
School nutrition, I just want to give a shout out to our nutrition services group. They are constructing a whole lot of meals every week, and they're doing a really great job. They've been incredibly patient with our families and patient with each other, and they're working with our employees to make sure that our employees get bags for their children, even if it's during their workday. So they're really going out of their way to meet the needs of our families and help as many people as possible. Now with the seamless feeding, if you have children from birth to age 18, you can come to Dana Gray or Redwood and get meals. Tomorrow is meal day. It's Wednesday, so get your bags. And it doesn't matter if where you are. If you attend Three Rivers or Montessori Del Mar or Mendocino, we are serving 5 lunches, 5 breakfasts, 5 snacks, 5 suppers. So it's a nice little hefty bag. So thank you to our nutrition services folks for doing that. These are the additional actions that we have that we didn't really know where to put them into the plan, but we wanted to address them. So Typing Pro is only for Dana Gray. That really is kind of the targeted age group to use it. I know that our middle school is doing some typing. They're using the free online programs. But we wanted to really target our Dana Gray kids for no ads, and being able to monitor their progress. And then we purchased some whiteboards for Dana Gray so the kids can hold up their answers to their teachers. They specifically asked for that. And then just so everybody knows that this document does not fully capture everything that we've spent our money on because we're still a work in progress. So, questions on that? This is our apportionment. We have a spot on here on how we addressed certain things for foster, homeless, and EL. Really, our internet rooms are how we're addressing those specific needs. Those have actually been going quite well, by the way, and just hats off to our Kudo staff and our bilingual aides who have been staffing that. It's been a pretty positive little setting.
So Becky, I just want to,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Mary.
Oh, I just was wondering how many students we have using the internet rooms at the different sites, if you have a ballpark.
So I believe right now the total enrollment for all 5 rooms is right around 46 or 47. And that's because the high school room is low.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to compliment the fact that I had attended several of those meetings, those meetings that you had listed earlier, and I was quite impressed with your immediate. Those things were included in this plan, so the parents and staff's feedback was immediately taken. I'm sure that's what you guys have been doing since the money was available. But I just wanted to thank you, and I hope the staff saw that, they are heard and action was being taken based on their feedback. So I just want to thank you and the staff for doing that and making our their opinions and needs heard and valued.
Thank you. Diana.
I just have the Google Meets. Can you talk a little bit about the security? I hate to even bring it up, but is it not when it's going to happen? Or if it's going to happen, it's when? Because there are other districts having problems with like Zoom bombing and those kinds of things. So how are we addressing that?
So that's one reason why we're not using Zoom. So Google we have more control over Google than we would with Zoom. And I recognize that Google's been a little slow picking up some of the great little features that Zoom has, but the reality is we can control Google a little bit more solidly. There's still issues, make no mistake, but the good news for us is that we can track it. And I hate to say that out loud, but that's the honest to God's truth. And then, Anna, I know you know a little bit more about this. Is there anything you want to add? No, I'm not meaning to put you on spot. I was trying to read your body language. I thought, oh, Anna wants to say something. Sorry.
Well, the one thing about the Google Meets and the reason we went that way is because we do have the control over it. It's our own. It has our own little wall around it, and so if something happens, it's going to be within our little network. So, which, like Becky said, makes it easy to track down. So it's less likely because there are a couple of little layers of walls that anyone from outside is going to get through and crash our system.
And then did some classrooms actually change their codes? That's probably another feature. But that has to be done. It's not automatically. They actually have to do the work to change the code to the class.
They can do that, yes.
They can, but it's not so much that as it is that it's all running inside our bubble, and all of the Chromebooks are tethered to our bubble. So they're not out there in the world attached to other networks coming in from there. They are all coming from inside the bubble.
Gotcha.
And
Thank
so
you.
one of the things is that anything that's in the chat is stored Anything that's in a Google Hangouts is stored. We have control of that. So if there's an issue, we could take the time to go back and look. We don't, because who has that kind of time? But if there's an issue, we do have that power. It's our little bubble. We can figure out what computer, where, how. Mary?
And isn't it true that the teacher initiates a new meet for each class and they get into that link first so they control that class?
It's up to the teacher. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Short answer to what you said. Yes. Some teachers change their Google Classroom codes. Some don't. Some create new ones daily. Some create them weekly. It's really up to the teacher. Staff members can now go in and just join a meet outside of their Google Classroom, and it's right in their email. It can be done through their calendar. There's a whole myriad of ways that it can be done. And you can create it through your email and then capture that code and then create that meet. The teachers have a lot of control to kind of change that up if they're worried about it.
And this is really a side note, but I thought it was so cool that Jacob was talking to his teacher on the phone, and then immediately she sent, okay, just go to a Google Meet using your name. And all he had to do was at the end of that Google Meet thing, he just put his name in there and bam, she was right there within like 30 seconds. So it's pretty cool.
And Google just pushed out new features. So they now have the grid view with you in it. And then they also have the blurred, where you can blur your background so that if you don't want to show off like my beautiful faux wood background, I could blur that like Anna has just done. It's exciting. So those new features, Google is trying to keep up and provide those things. I am grateful that we're using Google. For me, it's about making sure that our IT director has the control he needs to keep us safe. And Google has given a lot to education. I mean, we don't pay for Google Meets.
Mm-hmm. I just want to thank everyone. There's so much work in this document that I don't think maybe the public doesn't realize. And it's not even, you haven't really gotten into some of this stuff, but I just want to thank everyone for their efforts.
And the LCAP is coming next. That's in December. Yay. Any other questions about this? So there is a 30-second lag. If you have a question, please email it now before we close the public hearing. And Kathy, we might just want to give it a little bit of time.
Maybe give them the email again.
Okay. It's board meeting at fbusd.us. And so we'll, if no board members have any questions, we'll just kind of pause here for a minute, let anybody email quickly and have the video catch up.
I just had one last note. Spanish version, is that something that maybe would happen, at least for the content?
I need to call DTS and ask that. You had emailed me that, and my intention was to ask DTS, and I just haven't. DTS is Document Tracking Services. It is the company we use who provides the templates for all of these documents.
Can the content be pulled out of it and then that part translated internally? That would be more.
I could cut and paste each part and create a Google Doc and go through Google Translate. Sure. I don't want to make more work, but I'm just. No. I get it. That's an important question.
And maybe it's on, I'm sure it's on the agenda for the DLAC meeting tomorrow, or at least it was on last week. So if Tina could talk about it in Spanish, that would be one way at least to get some immediate information out.
Absolutely.
Okay, Anna, I didn't really watch the time, but anything come in?
There's been one more public comment, but also that is on the reopening of schools and has been added to the document in the drive. Nothing else.
Okay. So I'll ask the board for any last minute, or not last minute, but last comments and or questions for staff. Okay, anything else, Becky or Wendy, you think we're missing to hear? No? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing at 7:05. I think that is our longest public hearing since I have been on the board. And just know that next week will be the official approval of this document. So today was just the public hearing and the discussion, and then next week we will, so that it's not too late to get any feedback to Becky or us as the board members. Okay, so we're moving on to the action item that we have indicated that would be on every board agenda. And I'm just pulling up our comments. And I only see the one. Is there another? Do I need to
there's a separate document. It's called public comment on school reopening.
On school board. Thank you, Anna. Sorry, I just reopened the first one. Okay. All right. So I will go ahead and read these. Anna, just let me know if I need to refresh, if any come in at the last minute. But again, remember that the following public comment was received by the district using the telecommuting public comment email address. For ease of public participation, it will be read into record by myself, and this should not be construed as an endorsement of this comment by the district or by myself. So I'm going to start in the order that they came in. So hello all. Thank you all for the work you are doing to help keep our students and community safe. I want to encourage the board to keep distance learning remotely for the time being. As a parent of 3 8-year-olds, I fully acknowledge that distance learning is hard, capital H-A-R-D. I can't wait for schools to open, but we must keep the safety of our students, teachers, families, and community as the priority. Thank you for your time, Cindy Whitlock, parent. And then we have Nikki Hall. Why can't we separate our school from Ukiah? That's where the cases are, inland. So the kids and parent that want in-class instruction. And that was sent from Nikki Hall. And then Katie Turner. A few questions. Do the school sites have all the PPE and cleaners on site already? Will teachers and staff have a training about safety and the responsibility to keep students and each other safe? And how will mask wearing be enforced for students and staff when they go back? If anyone refuses to wear masks, will they still be allowed on campus? Thanks, Katie Turner Carr. Both my 4th grade and 6th grade have been doing iReady assessments for ELA and math already. So there was some feedback on that. And then here is another letter from Katie. Thank you for supporting the health and safety of our students, teachers, and community by continuing to keep our schools at distance learning. As hard as it is as a parent to balance work, support my 2 kids in school, and do all the other things a parent already does, I am so appreciative that the district has acted with the safety of the community in mind, and I hope you continue to act with the utmost caution. I also wonder, what if the country says once we go back to school, if we go to the purple again, we don't have to go back to remote? Will the district go back to remote out of caution or not? And with the district being responsible for the safety of students and teachers, I would expect the rules for wearing masks, PPE, cleaning, and socializing on campus to be very strictly followed, especially since the district is not protected legally from being liable if people are exposed and get sick. How is the district planning to address their liability? So we'll go ahead and, was that it, Anna? Did anything else come in?
I received one further public comment, which is not necessarily regarding return to school. It's more about multiple programs, platforms, and the iReady. I don't know if you want to address that now that we've closed the public hearing, or whether you should address that between now and the next meeting.
My initial response is that can you forward that to Becky and have her respond to it, and then we can read it at the next meeting if that wants to say. Is everybody okay? Diana's giving me the thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. So Becky, did you have a chance to kind of the questions? Because we'll need to come back to those, and I can open that document and we can talk about
No,
it.
I'm looking at it.
Okay.
I'm looking at it. I've got it.
So I just want to make sure we address the specific questions.
Okay.
We definitely hear the concerns about reopening, and but I just want to make sure we address the specific questions. So should we do that right now, or should we go ahead and just talk about where we are again?
Well,
And then go through the questions.
Let me address the questions by also showing you where we're at as a county, and recognizing that I don't have all the answers, if only. So let me get to I'm getting to the county page, and then I'll share my screen so we can have a discussion about it.
Okay.
And I'm trying to open up a couple of different tabs so I can scroll through a few different things. Okay, I'm almost ready. Okay, let me share my screen and then I will show you. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Great, thank you. So this is our county dashboard. And right now, what the state has done is they've given us a new tiered system. And that tiered system looks like this. Okay, the tiered system puts us at 4 levels. Purple is for widespread, red is substantial, orange is moderate, and yellow is minimal. And so with those 4 tiers, there are numbers associated with that. So for the first one, for the widespread, the daily new cases per 100,000 are more than 7, okay? And so we look at a 7-day average to determine, are the daily new cases more than 7? And then of the positive tests, is it greater than 8%? So those two things are calculated into these numbers here. And I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around, but right now we are in tier 1. That's why it's in purple. This right here is the daily positive cases. It's increased from the last couple of weeks. It was going down. You saw this little arrow here in the down area, but it's been going up. And why has it been going up? Well, what happened 2 weeks ago? We had Labor Day. So we're seeing an increase in those cases. But as of right now, this is in the red zone, and that's what people are talking about. And then this right here, this is also increasing, but the 7-day average is in that yellow area. So we are in the purple though. So why do we have a red here and a yellow here, but we're in the purple? Because we've been in the purple. In order to stay in the purple, or hold on, let me say this. In order to get out of the purple and be in the red, you need to be in the red solidly for 2 weeks in a row. So we've been in the red for 1 week. And the question is going to be, will we be in the red this week? Tomorrow, we have an OES call, the Operation of Emergency Services for our county, where this will be discussed. I'll know a little bit more for you tomorrow at 8:30. When we come to our board meeting next Tuesday, I'll have more information for you then. When I met with, when we had the OES call last week, there was a feeling that if the cases in Mendocino County continue to be on the downward trend, that we could potentially be in the red zone as soon as early October next week or the week after. So that's where this is coming from. If we are back in the red, then you as a board I'll be able to bring to you, we'll look at our reopening plan. We have 2 MOUs that revolve around that reopening plan, and you will be able to vote, do we stay at distance or do we bring kids back? So that's why you're seeing this right now. Will we go back into the red? I have no idea. Now, the tricky part with this is that once you're in the red and you have kids back on campus, you don't have to close if you go back to purple. And that's a pretty tricky spot for us because on one hand, the comment from Nikki Hall are most of the cases in Ukiah. Well, yes, most of our county is in Ukiah. So that's the tricky part. From Friday to today, Tuesday, there were 2 new cases on the North Coast. How do I know that? Because last Friday's, this is last Friday's infographic from the county. This is the blog that I published for the staff, and I always put up Friday's most recent pictograph. And so last Friday we had 72 in our part of the county, but 833 cases. Well, now let's go to today. Today we have 74, so we increased by 2 from Friday. But look what happened in the county: 833 to 887. That's over 50. So when you then do the math and you divide it by 7 and you see what your weekly average is, are we in the purple zone? Well, if I take 887 and I minus 833, it's well over 50. Okay. And if I divide that by 7, that's more than 7, because 7 times 7 is 49. So we know right now that even though this says that we are still in the red area, if you look at just the basic math, we are still in that purple range. So are we going to get back to the red? We probably will. But then, we've got things like Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And what happens in our community is that those special times aren't special isolation times, which is why you see this bump in the number. And it's not just our community. I think our community has done a really good job. If we've gone from Friday to today with only 2 new cases, that's pretty great. But we know that we are social beasts.
If the other problem, and I get the question about why can't we separate ourselves from Ukiah, we don't have our own public health officer. We have a county public health officer, and that's who determines what we are and aren't allowed to do. So that's why we can't separate ourselves from Ukiah.
So, yes, Mary. You're muted, Mary.
Sorry, yeah, I couldn't find it because you were presenting and it wouldn't pop up, but I found it. I just was curious. I know it says 6 there, but I know that a week ago we were at 808 on the 15th, and today we're at 887, so that's 79. And divided by 7, it's like 11 point something. So I'm curious why it says 6. Is there a lag with that, or
you're not doing a percentage? So you're just doing a straight case count.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're looking at a percentage, you're looking at the percentage of 90,000 people in our county.
Gotcha. You're right. That's where I was blowing it. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Other questions? So I want to show you this infographic because I think this infographic gives us a lot of information. If people want to know what tier we're in immediately, you can look at this infographic and it tells you the tier right up here at the top. Okay. If you want to see how to get how these tiers work, you can Google Blueprint for a Safer Economy, and you will get right to the site. And you can see the four tiers that we're in. I'm going to take you to that website because I think that website also shows more great information. You can put the county in and the activity, and it will give you exactly where that county is. Here's what I had, that picture. What I think is also neat is this picture here. This is the current tier assignment as of September 22nd, and you can look at all the counties. This on Friday was more purple than it was reds, oranges, and yellows. And so it's starting to ease up a little bit. You could go in and just point on any county and you can see where we're at. So here's Mendocino County. This is us here. And you can see that Lake County is in the red, but Colusa is in the purple. Glenn is in the purple, but up above here in Tehama County, they're in the red. And then you have Trinity and Humboldt County in the orange. So if you go to this website, you can click on any of them. You can learn all the counties of California. And you can see what color they're at and which counties are surrounding, what colors are surrounding our county. So for us, I think all of us are hopeful that we will get to the red eventually. But for right now, we are in the purple. Diana.
Are you able to ask questions at those OES meetings? Because I'm still unclear on, I wish there was data to know. Obviously, the North Coast has less positives, probably because we don't have accessibility to testing as much as, because Ukiah has OptumServe. So it would be nice to have a percentage per region of the testing. That would be more meaningful to me. If Fort Bragg is not, if we're low numbers, it's because we're not testing. We're not going over to Ukiah to test, and we're being, turned away because we don't work in a surveillance type, we're not asked to do surveillance testing, and or we have no symptoms. That's my other question. Of the over 800 people that have positive COVID, what's the percentage, or how many have symptoms out of the over 800 people? And my last would be how many, they recommend the surveillance testing to happen every 2 weeks. I don't know if anyone is able to do that, but if I know people can keep testing positive over 6 months, or I guess we have that data now. So are they getting recounted in that 800?
So my understanding of the testing, and I can ask those questions tomorrow, is that if you've already tested positive for COVID, they are not testing you again, because of that recurrence of potentially coming up with another positive test. So that I do know. Our surveillance testing here on the coast is done through Mendocino Coast Clinics, and they have rarely been completely full, meaning that you call and say, hey, I'd like to get a surveillance testing. They will always fit you in somewhere. I mean, it may not be the day that you call, but in my conversations with Lucretia Renteria, they've had openings. There has been some question about if you were in close contact with someone, will they allow you to test? I think that's shifted a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. Wendy and I are fortunate that we are able to meet with Lucretia Renteria, Judy Leach, Dr. Miller, Tabitha Miller every Thursday for a half-hour check-in. So I can ask those questions there. But for right now, if there's someone who wants a test, if you call the clinic, they do their very best to get you in. So, and the turnaround time is much better than it was. If you get a surveillance test on Wednesday, your test is back on Friday. If you get a surveillance test on Thursday, they have your test back on Monday. So it's a much better turnaround than what we were looking at the beginning, when it was taking 2 and 3 weeks to get a test result back. And at that point, it's over.
The other thing on Diana, if you look further, dig a little deeper into the county website where that infographic is, there are some other charts that show a breakdown by area. So yeah, you can see that. It tells you how many cases are in our direct area. And then I think above that, does it also talk, or does it have a breakdown also? No, it doesn't by location, but that one chart does show, exactly where the cases are, what communities are included in those cases.
And the other part that you want to look at when you're looking at this infographic is that these people down here are the ones who are our active cases. So we have 2 in ICU, 5 in the hospital, and 84 in isolation. The 778 have been released. And then unfortunately, we do have deaths as well. So these are kind of the numbers that you want to look at of what's in the community right now. Okay. So why am I showing you all this? I'm showing you all this because I have nothing to give you right now. We are in the purple. You can't really vote on anything, because even if you all said, well, let's go back tomorrow, we can't do it. The real question is going to be is, if and when we get back into red, what does that look like? What does that feel like? We've told every parent that if you don't want your children back in school, they don't need to come back in school. You can be remote for the full year. We did that survey early on in June, and then we did another one again right at registration, so we could move students into fully remote rooms, which we did. And that was about 25% of our population who requested that. Even now, if let's say miraculously we are able to come back tomorrow, we can't. Let me just say that right now, we can't. But let's say right now we could say, poof, we can come back. If a family came to us and said, you know what, we are not feeling good about having our kids in school, we want to keep them at home, we are going to work with you. What's difficult for us is that one size does not fit all. And that is the piece that I need to stress to every single family in our community. We know this. One size does not fit all. The difficulty is, how do we do this and try and address the needs of as many people as possible. That is a tricky task. And what's most tricky about this is that you have every opinion on the face of the map. And how do we address all of it? That's what's difficult. So I'm going to go back and look at some of these questions, Kathy, so I can address the specific questions that were asked.
And I wrote some notes too. So
okay. So Wendy addressed why we can't separate from Ukiah. Do the school sites have all the PPE and cleaners on site already? We have all of our PPE. Some of our teachers have asked for scrubs, and those are our teachers of our severely handicapped population. So we're in the process of getting that. As far as the cleaners, we have all of our cleaning supplies and all of our cleaning. We don't have the sprayers. Those have been on back order. They're supposed to be in next week. We're still waiting on that. We ordered those. I want to say we ordered those back in April or May.
Wow.
So those have just been on a hold list. But how those sprayers work is that the current cleaners that we have actually go into those. It's faster if we can use the sprayer, but we still have the cleaning supplies we need to be able to wipe down all the doorknobs, wipe down all the surfaces, and get the cleaning done that needs to be done. I want to say we have, 20 or 30,000 wipes. They come in packages of, I think, 200. Does that sound about right, Wendy?
We have more like 1.5 million wipes.
Oh, okay. Well, we got a lot of wipes. We have probably right now close to 4,000 different kinds of masks. We have 1,000 thermometers to give to families. We have 150 touchless thermometers for classrooms in our possession right now. We've just ordered 150 totes so that we can put supplies for each class in a tote so that teachers don't have to worry about cupboard space. They're going to have to figure out where to put the tote. But we're going to label everything with the big black Sharpie, and we're going to get those out to classrooms next week. We just ordered 1,500 pencil boxes so that every student can have their own supplies in their own spots so they're not touching and sharing. We have 400 face shields for teachers and kiddos who can't mask. We have hand sanitizer by the gallons. I'm trying to think of what else. What am I missing? I know I'm missing something. So do we have the PPE on site already? We have everything minus the sprayers that are still on their way. If the sprayers don't get here and we open, we can still clean the school without them. It'd be faster if we had them. But everything else is here. The new filters that we ordered, those are here. And like I said, we have a ton of masks for kids, for adults. And then if we come back, we will be providing thermometers for families who need them.
And I added a 0 there. I'm sorry. There's 150,000 wipes.
Oh, okay.
I shouldn't do math in my head.
Will teachers and staff have a training about safety and responsibility to keep students and each other safe? Yes. We'll be doing that in our staff meetings. How many, and basically, we do have a reopening plan right now that we've based our MOUs on. And so we will be looking at that. Prior to the teachers arriving in August, we started mapping out the campus for safety. So you'll notice in the hallways, there is painter's tape on the ground showing the direction of travel, trying to keep folks separate. We've put the capacity of each room outside on the door so folks know how many people can be in each room. We've plastered our COVID protocols in all the public spaces that we can find. We have addressed the scenarios of what happens if someone is in close contact, if someone has COVID, test positive, test negative. So that matrix with the 4 scenarios has been released, and that's out, and that's what we're using. We also have our parent letters ready to go. And like I said, Wendy and I have a standing meeting with Dr. Miller, Judy Leach, Lucretia Renteria, and Tabitha Miller every Thursday so that we can keep everyone informed of what's happening in Fort Bragg Unified. How will mask wearing be enforced for students and staff when we go back? So we have a document right now. It's called an on-campus agreement that if the students are going to be on campus, their families are going to have to agree to the terms of the agreement. And basically what it says is that I'm not going to send my kid to school sick. I'm going to self-screen at home. My kid will wear a mask covering their nose and mouth unless there is an IEP that determines otherwise. If my child is sick, I will be at the school within 30 minutes of a phone call. And here's the hard part. If parents can't agree to this on-campus agreement, then there's going to be a conference if there's a violation of that agreement. And if there's a second violation, then that kiddo is probably going to have to be removed from the in-person instruction and be returned to full remote learning. And no one's going to like that. But the reality is that if we have a kiddo who cannot keep their mask on and they're sneezing and coughing, then they can't be at school. If they have allergies, and we know they have allergies and it's not COVID, they still can't be at school sneezing and coughing. This is the hard part. We are in a new era. So if we have, a kiddo who's playing and going around, just goofing around, they're not going to be able to be at school. And so these are the difficult conversations we know we're going to have with parents. But our families also have to hear us that we are in a new day and age. We have to keep everyone safe, our teachers, our families, our staff, everyone. So if kiddos cannot come to school with the mask on, then they're not going to be able to participate in the in-person program. If they can't keep their hands to themselves, if they are touching, hugging, violating that 6-foot bubble frequently and not adhering to what our school rules are, they are not going to be allowed to be in the in-person program. And that really is going to be a tough one because in a non-COVID year, in a non-COVID setting, we have so many levels of intervention for behavior. We don't have that for this. We don't get to say 3 strikes and you're out. It's more like 2. If you are putting someone else's health at risk in the middle of a pandemic, you do not get to be on campus. So, and folks who wear their masks like this, they're not going to be able to be on campus. Your nose and mouth must be covered. And so that's really the difficulty. We've had moms already call and say, well, can they wear a face shield? Well, sure, but you need to put a cloth taped underneath the face shield and then the cloth goes underneath your shirt. That's fine. We will work with people, but you don't get to come in and sneeze on folks or come in sick. And the other hard part is that if a kiddo has a fever, they don't get to be on campus, period. So this is going to be the hard part for folks. And also, we need parents to understand when we're able to open schools back up, it's not going to be like it was this time last year. Okay, the playgrounds are closed at Redwood and Dana Gray. The playgrounds will not be open. Those are common touch points. Kids will be separated in class. Our teachers are going to do a fabulous job loving everyone, but there will be no physical contact. It will be completely minimized. Kids are going to have to be 6 feet apart. Students are going to have to sit 6 feet apart. We're asking teachers to stay 6 feet apart. It's going to be difficult because we have to take what Dr. Miller takes into account of what we should do there's already big discussions about breakfast in the classroom. Dr. Miller was pretty clear. You shouldn't have everybody unmasked eating at the same time. So I asked him, I said, and I don't know if any of you remember, what if we had half the kids eat at a time, or a third of the kids eat at a time? We say, okay, you guys eat, everybody else come with me. We're going to do a little small group, or we're going to do stations, and we're going to rotate the kids through the stations. And here's the eating station. Or we're not going to rotate the kids through the station. You sit here, we'll rotate the stations to you. Now is your time to eat. And we keep them 6 feet apart. So we're going to have to be creative on how we do this. But I need every single parent to hear me loud and clear. If you think you are sending your children back to school in a time in September or October that resembles September or October from last year, it's not going to happen. We aren't allowed to do it. We can't do it. And if your kiddo is unable to keep his or their mask on, they're not going to be able to be in person very long. And that's going to be a really difficult conversation. And we've watched that already in our internet rooms. We've had poor kiddos who are like, this is not working for me. And we've had to call their parents and say, this is not working. So know that we have a long way to go. We're not there. But if we're able to bring kids back and have in-person instruction, that will look very different than what we offered this time a year ago. If anyone refuses to wear a mask, will they still be allowed on campus? I think I answered all of that. Is there any part? So I think I've answered all of that.
I think so, because the liability is the waiver, right? Everybody has to sign the.
So we're doing the on-campus agreement. We don't have a liability waiver for in-person instruction. We're working with legal on that. The verdict is still out if we're going to be able to have something for parents to sign that's enforceable. We do have waivers for employees right now, because we do have some employees who are working on campus. So that's different. Yes, Diana, I'm sorry.
And I struggle with, I guess, the logic or the science, because all of our professionals are giving advice to our state. It seems so weird to me that we could be in the purple and have a waiver for K8.
K6.
Is it K6? And if you're under second grade, mask is, advisable, but not mandatory. And that seems bizarre to me, that you could be in a high, you could be in the East Bay, you get a waiver and you can have kids on campus in a modified version. But if you're in the red, to me, it just seems bizarre. There's something missing to that. And I know that the state epidemiologist, Dr. Pan has, or Pan, they say they have 6 months of data saying that kids are not driving. They can be PCU positive, but they're not infectious. And this was what she did for a living before being appointed. But at the same time, influenza is driven by kids. So it's just mind-boggling to me that they have 6-8 months of data and they still have that. That makes no sense with that information. And if it is highly contagious, why would they allow kids to come on campus in purple if you have a waiver? But if you have older kids that you think you can control and herd more effectively because they're older, they can't go on campus. But little kids that people are afraid they won't be masked and they won't cooperate can go on campus. Just throwing it out there. It's kind of frustrating.
Kathy, we do have 3 new public comments, and I've put them in a document called New Public Comments.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let the board have a few minutes, and then we'll go back to public comment. So if the board has any questions or comments to discuss, we know now we're not taking any action this evening, but of course, as this moves forward and changes, any and all discussion is important, I think. So if the board has anything now, Mary?
So I was noticing that Marin has moved into the red tier, but they didn't open immediately. They're going to survey all their parents again to see where they stand. Is that something we'd be doing as well?
That's up to you as a board. To be quite honest with you, we've surveyed our parents twice now. The data has been close each time to what the original one was. And we've been very public about it. If families don't want their kids to return, we're not forcing anybody to return. So whether or not I think the sites may want to survey their individual kids and their individual families in case we need to shift classrooms around. But I'm not worried about surveying our families again, only because we've given the choice to parents. We're not enforcing anybody to bring their kids to school. If you don't want to bring your kids to school, don't bring them to school. Stay remote. We're fine with that.
Okay.
And we still have to work on our testing routine. That's still a recommendation with the state if we do go into red, testing for staff.
So I've already given Lucretia Renteria at the Mendocino Coast Clinics. I've taken all of our employees, I've divided us into 8 groups, 30 per group. We have 232 employees, and then the remaining 8 spots have been for Kudos employees. And we now have a rotation. She has guaranteed that we will have 30 tests every week. We can begin as early as next Thursday, believe it or not. I'm actually going to work with her to provide that to our employees as an option beginning next Thursday. They don't have to. If they want to, they may, but it's completely up to them. One of the questions we have right now is it required? And we go back and forth with the county if this is a requirement or not. So that's what we're waiting for. But we have a testing plan in place that's ready to go as soon as next Thursday, believe it or not.
So I just wanted to say one last thing, that I have very serious reservations about reopening, as I think some of you probably already know that. Reading that Santa Rosa has decided to go remote for the rest of the semester, and they're at a slightly better position than we are in terms of their percentage of cases. Anyway, I want to speak to it next week, but I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted people aware of where I'm at.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Diana?
Do we know if the city will test the sewer again? Because I think the last 2 tests showed no COVID, and I don't even know if that's COVID-19 or what COVID they're able to detect.
I thought they were doing it every 2 weeks, but we can ask that question on Thursday.
Okay, anything else before we go back to public comment?
My final comment would just be that this is a collaboration of many folks to make this work. It's a community commitment. I take it seriously. If I were to go out of county and do reckless activity, I wouldn't go back to work. I would stay home for 2 weeks. And I think that people need to realize that we have the power to protect ourselves, what we choose to do and what we aren't doing. And if we use protocol and we're safe and we work with our family and the staff do the same thing and we work with our health officer, it really needs to be a collaboration. And we can't really, as anxious as some families are to go back because it's not working for them in this distant learning, but at the same time, to have them not know when they're going back on campus or if this is the new now, the new real for school forever, is hard for people to handle. But there's haste makes waste. We don't want to rush back, but I think there are many people very excited to get back on campus. But I know like Rockland was heading back, and I think they thought they had everything in line and the MOUs were, all in order, and they had a grievance filed from their staff. We want to make sure everyone's on board and committed, because I, as a board member, I'm only one person, but I don't want to get into the era of people pointing fingers at who's responsible for something that goes down later. Because if someone does become positive, on campus, that's going to create more stress for staff and families. And I know watching the county updates every week, there's pockets of populations or maybe even a business that it was adult contact to contact, someone, taking the risk of eating lunch with someone, unmasked. And I don't want anyone to be attacked or, said this one person's not responsible for, something going down. And I want it to be really respectful, but I think that we have to work together and make sure everyone's, on board. And then there was also a huge case down in Orange County where the Orange County Office of Education sued Newsom, and the California Supreme Court wouldn't even hear it. So, being a trailblazer isn't the answer either. You can't be too aggressive. We accept public funds. And so we kind of have to go through the hoops. But that's just where I'm at. What I want to do personally has nothing to do with what's best for all students and the safety of, all families and students and staff. But we need to work together. And it's not about us against them. And I just want it to be that kind of a process. And there is a process. And we're following.
And just to remind folks, again, I'm going to reiterate, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. When we're able to have kids back, I can already anticipate it. Some folks are going to be excited to send their kids, and a week later they're going to say, I don't know if I want my kid in this environment. Not that the environment will be great, or teachers are going to do a fabulous job, but they may be expecting October of 2019, not October of 2020. And also, as a board, you do have discretion. Just because we're in the red doesn't mean we go back tomorrow. And in fact, if we were in the red today, there's no way we could go back tomorrow. There's no way we could go back even on Monday. Our classrooms are not ready for students. Our classrooms are ready for remote learning. Our classrooms are ready for distance learning because that's what we're doing. But our classrooms aren't ready for kids yet. So recognize as a board, if we get into the red, it doesn't mean that you have to vote to go back tomorrow. It may mean that you give us a month, that you give us 3 weeks. You may say, okay, we'll do this, at this time. I mean, you do have an opportunity to discuss this and really decide what's best for our community. And again, we'll do that together. Again, and I would just reiterate, this is not a one size fits all. And for every story that we have of someone getting infected, we have another story of a school having no infections. And so every pro case has a con argument. Again, not a one size fits all. There are many schools in our state who are open to a hybrid model. And because they are so careful on campus, we're not seeing the infections on school campuses. We're seeing them outside. We're seeing them when the kids go to the river because it's 110 degrees outside. We're seeing them when families have together for grandma's 90th birthday, or when they go to a funeral or a wedding or those types of situations. There was a woman in LA, and I forget her name, so I apologize, but she was on a webinar and she runs the daycare centers for LA Unified. And she was talking about how they've been open since March and they haven't had a staff-to-staff outbreak because they've been very, very careful. But the outbreak, anybody who, the folks who have been reporting infection, it's been from an outside source, not from work. So we have some options. And just to reiterate, not a one size fits all. We are not going to force parents to send their kids to school. What I would say to every parent out there is that we need to provide options. One option for your neighbor may not be the option for you, and the option for you may not be the option for your neighbor. But let's be really careful about what we impose on folks and imposing our judgments on other people. We're all doing the best that we can. We're going to do our best to provide a safe option for folks, and then you get to vote on it. You lucky people. So we'll get through it. Kathy, I know there are more public comments if you want to address those.
Okay. Since nobody's jumping up, I'll ask again, of course, when we're done, but let's go ahead and take some public comments. So the first one is from Mary Pardini. Thank you all for what you've done for our staff and students. I would like, when possible, to open our schools up for in-person learning. I have discussed with many parents how difficult not only this is for their students, but also the frustrations that are coming from the teachers. There are schools in our neighboring Lake County that are open, Upper Lake. Could we model them? The increase of numbers most recently have been an outbreak at Fowler Auto Center, which contributed 20 cases in the last week. I believe since the cases in our area have been minimal, which does not reflect an increase here due to Labor Day, I would like to encourage to allow those students who would like to be on campus. In turn, they would work remotely with students who continue distance learning. Thank you for your time, Mary Pardini. And then Nikki Hall, MCC did hundreds of tests. They partnered with San Francisco. Also, Fort Bragg School can ask to separate from inland schools. I would like my child back in class. And then Cindy has a question. Cindy Whitlock, do we have the staff for cleaning as thoroughly as needed? So Becky, I'll have.
And the answer to that is yes. And the reason I say yes to that, I know we are down one custodian, but the difference is that in a hybrid model, we don't have all the kids back at the same time. That's a whole different level of cleaning when you're cleaning for 400 kids versus 100 kids or 200 kids. We've also been using some of our bus drivers to help with the custodial work as well. We have a sub in right now for the open position. And once the sprayers come in, the sprayers actually take the disinfecting of a room to maybe a 3 or 4 minute process.
Okay, and so let's see, there was a specific question about modeling for Lake County. And then that was the only other specific question, I think. So I think, Becky, if I'm correct, that has to do with our, because of our health officer, right? Because we're separate, we can't, is that correct in saying that?
Right. So Lake County has their own health officer. We have our own health officer. Lake County has had students back in a hybrid model 2 days a week. And it's different from district to district. Most of them are doing what we had suggested, what we had put in our plan as well, which is Monday, Tuesday A, Wednesday cleaning, Thursday, Friday B. So, but you know, it's interesting because a lot of teachers have brought up also that there are other models throughout the state. So right now, the MOU that we have with FBDTA, which is our Fort Bragg District Teachers Association, is for a hybrid model. Teachers will have no more than 30 contacts in grades 6 through 12, 28 contacts in grades 4 and 5, and 24 for grades TK through 3. And it will be Monday, Tuesday for half the kids, Thursday, Friday for half the kids, and everybody is fully remote, what we're doing right now on Wednesdays.
Kathy, there was one further question from Cindy. Do you want me to read it or do you want to refresh your documents?
Sorry, I went over to the document and then I was muted. I'm not quick enough on this technology. Why don't you go ahead? Just I'll just remind everybody that that Anna's not endorsing this or the position of the district. So
Cindy Whitlock, one more question. Will teachers, staff have the option of being on campus like students do?
So if a teacher needs to be remote, we have requested a medical note. So right now, teachers have the option to be on campus or not. We need to remind people that the hard part with this is that we can't be all things for all people. I know folks are nervous about it, but for right now, if our teachers requested to work remote all year, we ask for a medical note.
Okay. We'll go one more time through the board if there's any questions or comments.
This is not really probably a good question right now, but getting ahead of myself, just substitutes, you know, if there is in campus, I can't imagine there would be there's never a list for substitutes. I guess that it's a possibility that a class would go distant learning if you couldn't find a substitute for if there was a hybrid model and the teacher had to be absent.
That's correct. We are trying to maintain a sub list. Right now, administrators are serving as subs, to be quite honest with you. If we return to an in-person model and we can't, and a teacher has to call in sick for whatever reason, and we can't ascertain a sub, we always go to the admin first if we can do it. I know that in the past I've been a sub, so we do what we can to try and keep that in-person going. The hard part with this is that if we have a class at maximum capacity and you introduce a new person, it's a new person. That's the difficulty. So what may be happening if a teacher calls in sick is that group may have to stay home for the day and not have their in-person instruction.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Anything last minute, Anna?
No, there is no more comment.
Okay. I just want to I think parents are getting more and more used to our online. So now we're getting comments ahead of time. And now thank you for being participants in our virtual meeting. I know I appreciate that feedback, kind of almost as live as we can get. So thank you for that. Encourage more people to watch and email in. Thank you. Becky, I think you were going to unmute and.
No, I was muting because there's geese outside my window.
Okay. All right. Well, I think next week, if we continue to have, I guess, what's considered good numbers, so it may be a more lively discussion if we are moving towards that red. Diana, I do appreciate your comments about it. It is a community effort, and we do all have to work together for everything, whether it's school district or our community as a whole. And to piggyback on what Becky said, I think we have to be really careful on what our own wants and needs are, and what the wants and needs of because I know what I want for my children is not necessarily what everybody wants. So I think we're gonna have a really tough row to hoe. So not looking forward to that, but I think next week we'll have to have a little bit further of a discussion. So one more time, is there anything else?
No more comments.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, very much for being on top of that email. Okay. I think Jerry unmuted because it's almost his time.
I'm awake. I'm here. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And a second? Diana? Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday for our meeting.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you all. See you next week.